So you're quite successful, Bill.
My wife wouldn't say that.
Jan.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jan Řehola. I'm director of the Czech Gambling Institute for Gambling Regulation. I used to work before as a director of the gambling regulator in the Czech Republic, so I have experience to be a regulator, and now I'm on the dark side, so to say. So when we left the Ministry of Finance, we established this association, which is called Institute for Gambling Regulation, which is kind of umbrella association, which put together all the stakeholders on the Czech market. So currently we have 35 members. We represent 95% of the gambling industry. And we try to be something like bridge between the gambling industry itself and on the one side, and on the other side about the government and about the regulators and these kind of things. So.
Thank you very much. Mate.
Good afternoon. I'm Maciej Novota. I work at Casino Guru as head of data and complaints, and I represent the affiliate side of the business.
Thank you very much. Let's start with a little game. I'm asking the audience. I would like to have a lady and a gentleman playing the game. Just raise your hand. I will ask only a simple question. No money. Yeah? Thank you. And? You. Thank you. If you would like to play online on a website and you would be asked to set a personal loss limit, what would that limit be? Name a figure. $500 US dollars, euros, euros. Excellent. And you?
No limits.
No limits.
I have no problem.
Mate, there is a challenge for you. Please comment on this.
Yeah, I would like to demonstrate the fairness or like the future of responsible gambling on one example. It was like not necessary to set some limit in the beginning, but I would like to tell you how I see it. And now imagine the player who deposit 100 euro, or doesn't matter on the currency.
Not 100, 500.
Okay, so 500. And set a loss limit of, you say, 500. Okay, so that's the limit. And imagine that you would be extremely lucky and win like 1,000 with the first single spin. And then your balance is 1,500. And you decide to continue playing and play down your balance to 0. You would like to continue, so you deposit another, let's say 1,000, and you lose this amount. And now please, where do you think the casino should stop you when you set your loss limit to 500? I will give you some hints. So the first hint is when your balance reach like 1,500 and you went down to 500. So, sorry, to 1,000. So this is the first option. The second option is when you reach the 0. And the last one, when you lose 500 from your second deposit. So please, who believe that the casino should stop you when your balance is 1,000? Who believes that the casino should stop you when you reach the 0? And who believes that it's like when you be like minus 500? Okay, and now guess what? All these examples are like correct. In some casinos it's like that. In some casinos it's like that, and that's why we need some kind of standardization, because there is a difference between like net loss limit, absolute loss limit. There are many loss limits, and I can tell you one case from Praxis. I'm like also solving the complaints. And one guy who used to live in UK, he was using a loss limit a lot. And it works in one of these 3 ways, and he was happy with it. And then he moved to Romania. and he tell his casino that, hey guys, I want to move to Romania, I want to keep my account. So they transfer this account to Romanian one. It was the big brand, also operates in Romania. And to his surprise, in Romania, these loss limits works in different way. So you can see on this example how funny is industry in the way of responsible gambling.
Thank you. Bill, what would be the case in this scenario in US?
Well, I think, and by the way, I have a lot of respect for the head of your company and your company. I think you guys do a great job. It's a pleasure to be here on stage with you.
Thank you.
I think you did a very smart thing to open up this, Dr. Oz. I knew you would, although you didn't tell us you were going to do that. Because it really needs to be personalized and individualized. What I may need as limitations might not be able to impact or benefit you. I think the most important thing, and we're here to talk about, is that, and I don't say this egotistically for me, I say it for the issue. This panel, and more importantly, the subject, is I think the seminal issue facing the entire industry across the globe. If you follow what's happening in some of the regions I work in, like Oceania, Australia, New Zealand, they're coming down very hard on the industry in terms of not only limits, but advertising bans, which we're not a big supporter of, which really doesn't accomplish anything. And we know throughout Europe there's different ways to handle things between the way the UK handles it and Italy, Germany, Spain, and certainly the Baltic regions, CEC. What I think we need to do better is incorporating massive technology, and I'm not a tech expert, I'm a lawyer. But Entain Foundation, which if you will permit me, I've been serving on their Global Responsible Gaming Foundation with a great gentleman from the Czech Republic, Martin Lička, who's in charge of regulatory affairs and problem gambling, responsible gambling for Entain in the Americas, and a former New York Giant football player, Super Bowl winner Amani Toomer. We make up the foundation. We've been spending $50 million over the course of the last couple of years and more, not paying ourselves, but on doing research with Harvard University Medical School, with Rutgers University in my home state, and with UNLV, and then talking to experts in the area to understand that this isn't just a casual thing. Oh, let's put a 1-800 number on our consumer-facing app and check the box and we're done with it. What Entain has done is develop technology out of Israel, which is called ARC, Accountability, Responsibility, and Care. It sounds like a nice word, but they're really putting their money where their mouth is, and they're really a thought leader and a trailblazer. They have developed multiple markers of what they call prevention, maybe so we can understand it a little, it's markers of harm. 26 some odd different markers of harm. But, you know, I know you said the seminal thing so far today, which is, I don't really have a problem with gambling, I don't need limits. Everybody potentially can have a problem with gambling. Just like everybody potentially could have a problem with recreational drugs or alcohol. And the more there's a proliferation of gambling, like we're seeing in America, the more important it is for the industry to understand two things. Yes, we need to be morally and socially responsible, but that doesn't really sell to many people, particularly younger folks who are scraping to make money, who don't want to hear some RG lead tell them, slow it down, dial it down. They want to meet their bonuses. But the other end of the equation that we need to educate better the leaders in the industry is this is the commercially responsible thing to do. And if we don't get ahead of it, not only talking about prevention, which is key, because governments like that, so they're not spending money on the second part, which is when there's a failure, we need treatment. And who's going to fund that treatment? And what type of treatment is it going to be?
Thank you very much. Jan, risky player detection is one thing that you are doing in your company. Please.
Yeah, okay. It's basically what Bill just mentioning, what antennas do, we do the same. We develop a mathematical model which is analyzing the player behavior in Czech Republic. We have good advantage that all the players need to be registered in online but also in a land base. And therefore the operators, they have like enormous amount of data. And it's quite easy to analyze them. They analyze them before in order to make the player play more. But they can also do it in more responsible way. And then this model is working also with the markers of harm, which you can imagine as a player behavior or change in the player behavior about the time they are spending gambling, about chasing the losses, about increasing the deposit limit, about using multiple sources for depositing the player account and these kind of things. And if you put these markers together and put a mathematics model over it, then you can evaluate how the risky player is. So that's what we are doing. What is quite unique in the Czech Republic, what we hopefully are managed to do, or what we are currently doing, is that we put together not the data of the one operator, but we agreed to share the data of the all biggest operator in the Czech Republic. So we put together data from the Tipsport, from Sazka, from Fortuna, from Šance, which is 4 biggest online operators, which roughly we can say they have like 95% of the online gambling market in the Czech Republic. So if we team up all this data, then we have the picture of the player as a whole. So if you employ these models only on the side of the operator in other jurisdiction, you basically will see only the part of the player behavior, because usually the players, they are playing not only with the one operator, but they have the player account with the multiple operators.
Especially the problem gamblers.
Yeah. So basically, that's what we really believe, and also we can touch on standardization and how the operators are dealing with that. So if you manage to keep them or put them together, if they are competitors, so they compete on the market. But we believe in responsible gambling, there is no room for competition, but there is a room for cooperation, because at the end of the day, the interest of the operator is the same. They want to protect the players, they want to make prevention, and they want to do it like together, because if they are not doing together, there will be always one operator who will set up some responsible gambling policy. They will, for instance, close the bonuses of the risky player behavior, or they will close the account, and the player will simply go to the different operators. So there will be just competition among the operators, who is more responsible, and the player will traveling to different operators if they are risky, and they will be limited with one operator, they will play with another. So that's why we believe this approach is only like partially effective, and we believe that if we manage to put all the data from all the operators together, and potentially at the end of the day also ask the state to endorse our model and to make obligation for all the licensed operators to use it, there won't be like regulatory free rider who will take benefit of taking bets from the risky player, which are excluded from the operators which they believe, of who they believe that responsible gambling policy should be in a DNA of their company.
Thank you. Mate, we have two things. First, a global self-exclusion system. I said global because if it's not global, it doesn't make sense. If I'm self-excluding myself from his company, and after 1 hour I would like to play, I immediately go to Jan's company and playing. And you are dealing with this kind of problem. And the second one is that you have a lot of information, a lot of data regarding complaints from the players related to RG tools. Could you please have your point on these two aspects?
Okay, so I start with the data what I have. Currently, we are processing over 1,000 complaints per month from players. Most of these cases are rejected because the players, they basically want to know the opinion of the experts in the industry. If their complaint is like, if it's possible to complain about something, most of the players, they are not in the right, but like 30% cases end up in our complaint solvers, and they are like help the players. Some casinos, yes, some of the cases are unresolved, some are solved, some are rejected. This is the 70%, the rejected. But from these 30%, only like 3 to 5% are about responsible gambling. Most of the cases, from all of the cases what we are processing, are about delayed payment. I have also the deeper data about complaints related to licensing authority, and it's like not a surprise that the better licensing authority, less complaints. And to answer on your second question about the self-exclusion, again, I would like to use one example from the industry. The UK players who did the self-exclusion through GamStop, so UK national scheme, they later usually regret the decision to do this because they want to play, they don't want to stop, but because of the scheme now they cannot take the decision back, so they need to play with offshore casinos. And in UK, the system is like, some of the tweaks are really good. Like, for example, withdrawal limit. In UK, the players can withdraw all the money at once. There is like no limitation. And in offshore casinos, most of the casinos, they have a limit, and it's usually very low. So they are aiming, especially for these like players who cannot hold it and have a temptation to play more, and eventually it works for these players, and they are suffer a lot. So especially with self-exclusion, it's very important to make a scheme which is like global. We have the Casino Guru has an initiative about global self-exclusion, and we would like to cooperate with all the jurisdictions to create one list when the player decides to stop gamble. It should work everywhere.
Thank you very much. Bill, is coming to my mind a question regarding how do you share or try to educate regulators in US based on your experience, on your knowledge, on your global, let's say, analysis of how regulators go from a spectrum of tough regulation, which brings the operators almost out of the market. On the other hand, to have a sort of regulation which allows newcomers, new operators, to afford the new market.
Thank you. That's a really good question. So we just celebrated, which is, I don't say this in any other way than to tip my hat to my brothers and sisters in Europe, because you are the innovators, you're the knowledge, you're the tech stack behind this industry, for sure. Between Europe and Israel, that's where all of this technology has come from. America's only had online gaming legally for the past 10 years and 4 months. We launched on November 23rd of 2013. And then the other states came on. So for me, it's kind of a very interesting conversation, why I love going to different regions of the world and meeting new people and talking to them. Because although America has a lot to learn from the rest of the world, which is far more mature, like Europe, in terms of the technology and the gaming industry online, I think America is also going through a very big acceleration process. You've had online gaming here for decades. We've barely had it for a decade. And I'm not just talking about casino and poker, online sports betting, which is massively growing in America. It's just about in every major state except for California and Texas, and that's political reasons. The regulators 11 years ago, when we got the law passed, had 9 months, 270 days to develop the regulations and implement on that date I told you, November 23rd. And the funny thing about it is the regulators were sitting in their office. Now, these are folks that regulate brick and mortar retail casinos. Now they're going to regulate online. Let me tell you something, and I just got a call from the chairman of the board of Bally's. You all know Bally's, that's a global brand. I will call him back as soon as we're done, because he's an important client. But brick and mortar casinos are the worst people in the world to talk to about online gambling. They're learning about it, but they always thought that this industry was going to cannibalize them. And if it wasn't for online gaming, and I'm going to speak particularly to America now, Vegas and Atlantic City would have shut down and never opened back up, because we have this tethered function where we have skins at each casino, and the skins, are sold off to various online operators. The regulators had to reach out to where? A good friend of mine and client, Mario Galea from Malta. He was the regulator in Malta for many years. I see some head shaking. New Jersey hired him to come into the state for 2 years to both develop the regs, to launch, and then to continue the compliance. But here's a great story. Because so many young people in this industry don't know the history, and I think history is important. My father was a history professor before he got into politics. I'm at one of the largest gaming conferences in the globe. ICE has been known to be #1 in terms of attendance, which many of you come to. G2E in Vegas has been going on forever, and they get a pretty darn good attendance there. 30, 40,000 competing. They don't compete with ICE, but in terms of attendance. I'm on the stage 2 months before Jersey's going to launch with the regulator, David Reebok, who's known globally, very well respected. New Jersey's become the platinum standard for regulation. And it just dawned on me. I had never represented at that time, 11 years ago, a payment processing company or a bank or a credit card company. We got off the stage and I said, Director, I said, I have something to ask you. Have you talked to Dobie? What do you mean? And Dobie is our Department of Banking and Insurance. He said, why would I talk to them? I said, well, you're getting all these regs in place. You're going to launch in 65, 70 days. Have you talked about like the core thing of online gaming, which is payment transactions and processing? And like you would have thought his hair, although he's follically challenged like me, was on fire. He immediately called the commissioner. They began to work and he sorted it out. And I'm not taking credit for anything. But if I had not told him that, it would have been a devastating debacle because they wouldn't have met their timeline. That's how backwoods we are. And we're playing catch up now. But what we're also doing is we're learning from some jurisdictions who've had regulatory overreach because they don't have folks like this helping them out, where they're now cracking down. So just a year ago, a congressman who represents the area in New York called Saratoga. I'm in the horse racing business as well. I do a lot of global horse racing. Saratoga Racetrack is known globally. It's a beautiful, historic track, not as old as some of the more famous tracks in Europe. He represents that track, and he lodges a bill in the US Congress to ban advertising in sports betting. And the industry laughed because, first of all, he's a Democrat. The Republicans control Congress. Second of all, Congress can't even pass a budget, let alone pass a gaming bill. And we've typically regulated in America gaming and auto insurance to the states. They've had the right to do that. The funny thing about this is Martin Litschka, who you know well, and I went to go see the congressman. And he's like, you're the first people to come see me. This is 3 months after the bill was lodged. He cares about mental health. He knows nothing about gaming. He might throw a punt down on a horse race now and then because it's in his district. We developed a really good conversation to explain what these two gentlemen have been doing forever. First of all, the worst thing you could do It's to ban affiliates. That, a couple of states tried to do that in America. We're going to ban affiliates, and that's going to solve some problem. The second worst thing you can do is ban advertising. Advertising is the way we educate people to move them to regulated license sites. And if it were not for that, they'd be going to the dark market.
Thank you. Coming to Jan about educating players and the general public. We've seen some figures early in the afternoon about the general public feeling of addiction, 21% in Sweden, and the research, the real research, the data-based figures, 0.5. It's a huge gap. What are you doing in order to reduce this gap of feeling that is the harm, the gambling harm, it's so big, and what it is in reality?
Thank you, Dan. It's a very good question. Basically, it's heritage of the past, you know, because in the past everybody was speaking about the problem that the gambling is related with the problem gambling. So the general public have imagined that all the players who play, they have the problem or they are going to have a problem, which actually is not true. If you look at the prevalence rate, regardless which jurisdiction you look, it's between 2 and 3% worldwide, which is also quite interesting to look because, you know, the gambling policies differs a lot. So there are countries like Islamic countries where the gambling is banned. You know, there are very liberal countries like Australia. So regardless, you look, it's very strict or it's very liberal. At the end of the day, the rate for the gambling or problem-related gambling harms are very similar. So it means it's not really depending on a general regulation. So there are other sources of the gambling disorder, which is not really caused by the regulation itself. Of course, there is some role, but it's very limited. And therefore, it's very important to look at what really caused the problem gambling and how we can treat it. But back to your question, what we also do, we educate the general public about the problem gambling. So we try to be very open. We say, okay, it's 3%, so 97% of the gambling or of the population in the Czech Republic doesn't have problem. They don't gamble at all, or if they gamble, they can keep it under control, which doesn't mean that we should not focus on those 3%. So it's rather the contrary. So what we really believe is saying, okay, it's a problem, it's a severe problem, it touches 3% of the general public, but still it's a lot of people, you know, 3% is not something that you can say, okay, it's not a problem at all. It's not 21, but it's 3. But what we really believe is that you should focus on those 3%. So meaning you should early detect those problem gamblers. You should early detect the first sign that the player are in the process of losing the control of his behavior while he's playing. And then you should approach him like with the early intervention at the early stage, meaning that you should give him like personal messaging, okay, saying, okay, we see that you are depositing more than you used to. We are seeing that you are spending more time or more money on gambling than in past, let's say, 2 months. So is everything in control? Do you want some help? Do you want to set up the limits? Do you want to speak with a professional that you can discuss some problem? And this kind of things, this nudges, this pushing him towards more responsible gambling, we believe it's the only way forward because, and it's also like we can continue with the pools. We believe that the general regulation often comes with let's say measures which on the first sight looks like a very good idea, but if you make the research and you make the data, at the end of the day you will see it's not really working. So we also, I can introduce you to the academic research we did with the National Institution for Mental Health, which is state body, so it's independent academic research. And we interviewed the risky player which are already in a treatment center. So we asked them, in the Czech regulation from 2017, there is a new obligation saying that if you are playing, regardless if it's land-based or online, if you are playing slot machine, you should, while you are playing, see the balance that is your balance from the opening your account. So the main idea was that the player will stop, playing. So you can guess if you intervene those risky player, and we ask them what was the outcome of when you see this balance that you from the beginning of opening the account, what this done to you? So we can judge, so you can guess. So how many people do you think that they say, okay, it was helpful, it gives me some reality check, and then I consider that gambling should be, I should limit my gambling. So.
Excellent. I will reserve the last 5 minutes for the audience to ask questions. Mate.
No, sorry, I will try to finish it. So it was.
Sorry.
No. So it was actually the opposite. So the players, they said, okay, it make me to win all the money backs, you know. So and we also like measure the players by PSGI test, and we see that more riskier the player are, or more in problems, the answer was, okay, I want to win the money back. If the player were in the control, they said, okay, it helped me, you know. But the reason why the ministry it was introduction this kind of measure was they believe that it will help the risky players, but actually it speed up the process of gambling in this field. So that's why we believe it's not like one size fit all, you know. We should always like measure the people how risky they are, and then try to intervene in a way which is very helpful, because if you do it in general way, it has actually the adverse and opposite effect than the people usually think.
Thank you. Mate,
If I may, I would like to react on that, because I believe this deserves a little attention. As you know that we have lots of jurisdiction here, and it seems like every jurisdiction in Europe, they want to have something special. Like Germany, Italy, Spain, UK, like there is lots of responsible gambling tools. And in Germany, they introduce like 5 seconds per spin. In Italy, it's like 2.5 seconds per spin. And I don't think that somebody really think about the effect on the industry. Like every country or every regulator, let's say, they want to be special. They want to do the extra mile for the players, but like sometimes this unique tool, what they develop, is not helping at all. It moved the players from like legal casinos to offshore casinos, because it's something so unique that the players cannot they don't want to go through it.
do you have examples of players abusing RG tools?
Yes, this is like a funny topic for casinos. For example, there are players who know about self-exclusion, and there are casinos where it's not possible to exclude directly in the casino. The player needs to write email to certain email address. So there is a bunch of people who simply write email to the casino on Friday evening that they want to self-exclude and wait like 48 hours. And or especially when it's some holiday before Christmas or so on, and then they start depositing. They try it like with a little amount, more and more and more, and the more casino is delaying this or not react on this response, they are depositing more and more, and then they want money back because the casino not react in a certain period of time.
Yes, so there is a sort of responsibility that should be shared between operators and players. You cannot blame always the operators. You cannot push operators to the wall and put a gun to their head.
On that, I will tell you what I'm telling to every operator: make the self-exclusion available in your website, and that's the best decision you can make, because you are perfectly covered. The player could self-exclude himself anytime, and you will never be in the lawsuit about self-exclusion.
I want to touch on that as well, because we have the same experience in the Czech Republic, and us like being before working for a regulator and now like being more in touch with the industry, you can definitely see some like mind shift, meaning that when you are the regulator or you are working for a state, you see that you should like defend those good players from the evil operators. So that's basically how the regulation is look like. It really doesn't make sense, because then you see that 90% of the regulation, if you look at it, it's not really needed, because it's a, okay, you should, I don't know, like pay out the winnings in that amount of the days. So basically that's the market, you know. If you don't pay out instantly the winnings, you won't be on the market and the players will not play with you. So basically 90% of the regulation is not really needed because it's governed by the market. And also this thing that you should defend those like good players against bad operators is completely like different in the field of the responsible gambling. We also have the experience because we have national excluded register where the player can register himself, and he's excluded over all the market, and basically it works for online and land-based as well. And there are like many players, mainly the foreigners, which have, for instance, like multiple IDs. They use one ID with the one details to sign up in a register and then go to the land base. For playing, they use different IDs, so they have different names and different details. And once they are losing, they say, okay, but I'm in a register, I should get my money back, you know. So, and it's a very good example in the Czech Republic because with this register of excluded person is the Ministry of Finance, which is making this register in live. So he's like, he's proceeding all the procedures there. So they are dealing with the players. So now they see that the players are actually like complaining. They are saying, okay, it was not the case. It was not me who signed up for the register, or I was in the different details. So now the Ministry of Finance see how it's very complicated to communicate with the players, and the players are different. And sometimes they can like misbehave and try to mislead, you know, the operators in order to achieve some goals for them.
Thank you. Bill, do you have a final word, a final, let's say, conclusion?
Yeah, there is no bulletproof solution to this. This is an evolutionary process. We're learning every day. The address of RG needs to be based upon real, solid, long-term research and not just knee-jerk reaction. What we've talked about here in many different channels of the industry is there's a massive lag time that we need to be immediately responsive to as data is coming in on a personal player so that we can react to it. And the final thought is just to maybe bring it back to my home. We don't have a national self-exclusion list. So if you self-exclude in one jurisdiction and the regulator will be noticed of it, there's this thing called data rights and data privacy and personal security, et cetera, which I think is a bunch of garbage, by the way, even though I'm an attorney and I respect the law, because there are some things that require some easements on some of those regulations. Because if I have a problem gambling in New Jersey, I just get in my car and go to Pennsylvania or New York, and they're not aware of it, there's something silly about that. And final point, if I may, I believe the industry, at least where I'm from and most expert in, which is the Americas, we are one newspaper headline away from some regulator or politician's son or daughter, or aunt or uncle, or mother or father, or brother or sister, going down that unfortunate rat hole of having a problem. Because the problem's not just temporary, it's not just financial, it's mental health, it's relationships, it's your job, so much. And I think it's our obligation as an industry to get ahead of the curve faster than we're doing it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions, please. No questions. Ah.
Thank you. I have a question regarding AI. Do you see any use cases for AI and how it can improve responsible gambling as of today? Because we don't have proper AI yet, it's just like language model, but still. Do you see how it can contribute? Thank you.
Jan?
Yeah, definitely. We are like using AI, or we plan to use AI in our model. So once we have the mathematical model and the data are involved, then the AI is a great tool to learn from the data and adapt the model itself. So the one use of AI. And the second use of AI we are hopefully are going to use is the chatbot. So basically it's very tough, for if we are intervening with, millions of players in the Czech Republic. So it's not possible for the operators to do it by themselves. We can intervene at the end of the day. They need to be human, for some cases, the more severe cases, for instance, if they want to speak with a professional. But the vast majority of the players are even more effective to use the chatbot, because they are sometimes, or very often, they are scared, or they feel ashamed speaking with the people about the problems they feel they should be ashamed. So for them, it's even more more welcome to speak with a chatbot, and they can get the information very quickly, so they can just open up the conversation. Our chatbot, we have like the model is called Iris, so it could be like your buddy or your guardian angel, which will just show up. It will like initiate the conversation with you, saying, okay, hi, how are you? Your favorite club is playing today. What do you think? Do you want to bet? And then you have a discussion with the chatbot. You can hardly even like recognize the chatbot. Only way how you recognize it is much faster. And then he can ask you, and what about your gambling? Do you feel some problems recently? Do you want to set up the limits, or do you want to discuss with somebody? And so there is a huge room for AI using the chatbots, and also the developing the models itself, where the AI is very effective in order to see the patterns of behavior and adapt itself. So AI is a very good tool.
Thank you.
Okay. I think most people are aware of there is a like European movement. The European Union wants to make them some kind of a standardization when you were talking about the markers of harm. And when it comes to this, you were talking about that every state and every regulator enjoys to do it its own way. So there is some kind of a basic list of markers of harm, which will be the real European standard in the situation where the gambling is not harmonized at all. We are not talking about AML and so on. So this will be some kind of a specific area where there will be some whole European. It won't have. I think it won't have obligatory. So to say, it won't be forced by the European Union, but it would be more like a recommendation. But still, if this can help, or it is just like some kind of a non-successful kind of initiative.
Mate, do you think it's possible? In other words, if I understood correctly, do you see, Bill, do you see in a foreseeable future a sort of standardization regarding markers of harm?
Yeah, so we know that the industry is evolving, let alone RG, but the industry is evolving constantly. We're in the process of making an announcement soon. It's hard. Getting operators together is like herding cats. I mean, they walk into the room, they smile, they'll have a drink, but they hate each other. They want to stab each other in the back, right? That's the competitive nature. And that's fine. But I think there's beginning to become an opportunity, because some of the global leaders, let me give you an example. Everybody in this room must know this company. They're a big client of mine, Continent 8, the server company, cybersecurity company. They are about sustainability in the industry globally, okay? So they have compliance people. As a matter of fact, their head of regulatory compliance is here, Jeremy Cantor, very smart man. They're putting roundtables together at major conferences to collect regulators to talk about seminal topics like AI. Most lawyers that come up here don't know a hoot about AI, but they'll try to make you think they do, right? Talking about real experts, first of all, to show the regulators that we're here to help And there's a benefit in standardization. And why is that? Because before we know it, and this was just said in Palm Springs, California last week, and it really shook me. Before you know it, regulators will be replaced by AI. So you better get ahead of this curve. That's a good way, not to smack them in the face publicly, but in a more intimate roundtable to explain to them that the more we can standardize and be successful, you might not always be ahead of the curve, but you're not going to be behind the curve. You can have a more collaborative event. And if the industry collapses, you're out of business anyway. And so I always felt the final point I'd like to make is, being a former brick and mortar casino lawyer, lobbyist, compliance, regulatory affairs person, I know how the casinos treated the problem gambler, brick and mortar. If I was a problem gambler in Caesars Casino in Las Vegas or New Jersey or wherever, they would just say, hey, Bill, why don't you come back? Here's another marker. This industry cannot afford to do that. And we're different because we're far more tech savvy and innovative, but we also sometimes get ahead of ourselves because we see the big gold bars, and sometimes that distracts from creating a more sustainable industry. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
If I may, you know that regulations are usually written by lawyers. Regulators, they do what is written in the law, and if the regulations across like Europe the regulators cannot like deal on some standardization, isn't this an opportunity for operators to start talking about some self-standardization?
Self-regulation. Yes, it's a good point. But from my yes, please. From my experience, as it was mentioned before regarding advertisement, self-regulation, if I would be an operator and I would be asked to self-regulate myself, I would say, no, let Bill first self-regulate himself. Why should I? Yes. If it's not industry-wise, if it's not adopted by all operators, it's senseless because, and imagine that we are acting on this market, on the Czech market for 10, 15 years, and there is a newcomer. And we say to the newcomer, hey, you should restrict your advertisement. But we did our job, we did advertised for 15 years. We are well known. What about the small one, which is just coming over? He said, how would I myself make known if I restrict to the level that you are allowed to restrict? Yeah. Please. Yeah? Please. Yeah. I will give you an example of Mindway AI, which is doing exactly like this, and I think they are now more than 100 territories, countries present, and they are doing exactly like this, combining psychologists, experts, and AI in order to make a system that is early detecting and give less and less false alarms. Yes.
If I may touch
Yes.
on that, it's what I think it's very important is that the industry itself, it proved that they are like genuine in this intention. So one point is that we say, okay, we have this kind of tool, we have the policies, we have the limits and these kind of things, and we are responsible in marketing, but the regulator and the politicians, they often see that as a proclamation. So we need to prove that it's really genuine, our interest to limit the risky player behavior, and we need to prove it by the data. So we need to have the evidence that our systems are detecting the risky player. We need to have evidence that once we approach them and we intervene with them and we message them, we call them, we direct them to some helping center, and we can then see how their behavior is changing after this intervention, and we need to prove it to the regulator and approach them and say, hey, look, our system, what is actually doing is that if we measure the database of the players and its risk score, in a long time, the average risk score of the player is decreasing. So this is better example how it's working, and we need to prove them that we are not like alcohol industry, which on a label of the beer, right, drink responsibly. I don't know which effect it has, for
Get
the
drunk responsibly.
So and that's how the regulators and politicians are look at our initiative, because they believe, okay, they are as a tobacco, they are as alcohol, they just do it in order to prevent the regulation. But actually the interest of and I can speak on the operators which are in our project, they really believe it. So, but nobody believes us that we are genuine in this interest. So we need to prove it to the politicians that it's really genuine, and we need to prove it with the data that what we actually do is that we are limiting risky players. It has some effect on our business, okay? It's not effective that we need to close the business, but we also believe that in the long term, if we stop the players at the right time, and even speaking from the financial point of view, for the operators, it will be more beneficial to have a player for long term, waging or betting the money he can actually afford to lose in a long lifetime, than rather to be ruined in 1 week. And so even from financial perspective, it could make sense, and we need to prove it, and we need to be really genuine in it.
It's really easy to demonstrate how many problems you had. It's really difficult to demonstrate the opposite, how many problems you avoided.
Thank you. I think I have to thank you to the audience that you stayed at the very final panel. And I would like to thank you, our distinguished panelists, and give them a big applause. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, like Dan said, thank you for sticking around for this late hour. Guys, we wrap up today. Tomorrow we will be back with more content. But we will see each other. Jan, where do we see each other and at what time? All right, Royal Theatre at 7 o'clock. Be there. And tomorrow morning, if you want to come to run, we'll see you at 7:45 down in the lobby. All right, so take good care until then.